At this meeting, and we will be ready to kick it off. Robert, we are now sending that broadcast. To answer your question, it is sent to my personal channel on YouTube as well as to the OMI Twitch. I need to enable the OMI YouTube to be one of our source channels, and then we'll go ahead and start sending those directly there. But we will go ahead and create a playlist for the archives that we do have so that they can all be in one place.
All right, welcome.
All right, and welcome everyone. I think we lost our Robert. Welcome back, Robert.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
I apologize. I may have clicked the button on you while my phone rotated. This worked that.
No worries. That'd be funny though. It sounds like the main focus that we have for today is revisiting the future structure of OMI workshop that we want to plan. Right?
Correct. We've got some thoughts on how to move forward. We've got the retroactive work and the backlog work now done. So we've been able to do some look back at the last year of progress and see where we've been doing a good job and where we maybe missed the mark. So we do have some of that sort of background ready to go. And we have a potential process, or at least the start of one, but we need to have a conversation about how we want to enable that and empower that and how we want to walk through that process together. So yes, let's open up that conversation. I want to make sure we've got everything else on our agenda also addressed today and sort of time banked so that we're not shortchanging anything else.
Yeah, I think a lot of the working group updates are going to be fairly short.
Great.
So I think we have a sizable chunk of time to talk about this.
Fantastic. And I don't think we have Mr. Metaverse here yet, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So we'll hold off on the conversation about retro and where we did some sort of look through the past year. I did go ahead and we've got some of those sort of updates here, and I can give you just sort of the pointing benchmarks there. What we've seen is that generally our working groups are building rapport, not just internally, but externally, and that is moving forward in a great way. But in order to do that work effectively, we are going to need more maintainers. And this is something that kept coming up as a sort of sticking point for effectiveness as a community, that we need to really diversify our leadership and also empower more people to take on new types of roles and make those roles super clear, especially the participation points. So just to summarize what we saw in that retro, and I want to thank those of you who came in for insight, is that we need to improve, number one, the front page of our Git to make it far easier to understand not just our working groups, but how to participate, what those participation points are, and where people can get involved. So after we go through this strategic process to look at organizational development, we need to do the second half of that, which is strategic planning around engagement and how we want to be a community amongst the other communities in our field and industry. So there's some sort of big picture questions about who we want to be as a community And those are the big things that we need to have a conversation about and do a workshop. I would like to suggest a process for that, and we'll get to that shortly. So I just want to pull out this really interesting quote here. It's initially hard to tell which groups do what and how I can get involved. I have to guess based on the title of some of the working groups. So this is a thing that we definitely are going to need more help with in terms of consistently improving our language and how we communicate with the public. So as we talk about, we need more maintainers. Some of that means we need more people to help us communicate effectively. And in other cases, we need people who are better at documentation or helping to share this story effectively as well, making sure it's organized and clear for everyone. Anthony, did I get most of what was there? I think Carbis, you were also engaged in that conversation, and we've got some notes here on eventually moving toward an open source calendar or some other way that people can follow. We need to give people better subscription capabilities in general, and these are things that we want to look at in the second half of the future structure conversation. I think does that get to most of it, Anthony or Corbus or anyone else who was there? Carbis, sorry, Luke. Did I catch most of our retro?
It seems like it.
Hey, there's Jesse. Excellent. Thank you for helping us do that work of just kind of looking at where we're excelling. And I do think some of our working groups are really taking off and seeing great results, not just in terms of making things visible to the world, but also in terms of just building great rapport as a community and doing things together and showing value for that work. So I just want to thank you for participating in all the different ways that all of you are doing that, whether that's in avatar work or in the website or in one of the working groups like GLTF or WASM.
Thanks everyone for showing up. Do another retro in probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Have backlog refinement in 2 weeks again, which is a once a month thing. So maybe we do a retro once a month. I think one of the biggest parts, which you touched on, that came from the retro too, is that like it was a stark reminder that we're about on day 30 of 90 of discussing what the future structure looks like. And so you might want to have either more retros to get more things out more often, and like a workshop. And I know Eva's going to share more info later about some ideas about how we can do that workshop. And I think they sound really great.
Cool. Thanks for that update. And other elements or inquiries or thoughts based on the retro?
This is just important is that you want to make sure it's different times. So next time I'll do it at a different time so that folks in other time zones can participate. These are recommended for working groups to be doing. I'm going to keep running OMI wide retros until it feels natural, or working groups can also run retros. That's totally how you make things actionable and going to demonstrate what can be good for us as a group in the form of running OMI wide retros. Again, they're not meant to replace your working group. If you want help with that, I'm happy to come run one of those with you as well.
It does help us really figure out if we are meeting our goals as a community, and then if we need to re-articulate those goals or that work differently, we can do that. And obviously we do need to articulate ourselves differently as a whole community, and that's across the board, and that's also within these working groups. How we do that shared collective development work and what that looks like, I think is still something that we need to have a conversation about. And so let me make sure that we are on point in terms of our agenda, because I'm tracking too many windows while streaming here. And I've got to say, it's a little bit challenging for me sometimes to make sure I'm keeping track of everything at once in one place. So beyond the retro, we recognized that we needed to do just some assessment, and that included energetic assessment and sort of where the time and energy are. Obviously, most of you are engaged in very specific volunteer efforts right now, whether that's a working group or that's the things that you're developing. And there are ways in which we don't always get to see each other. I think Jen's making a really interesting point about meta coordination and how that happens. I think there's a number of ways that will be formalized, and if that comes under Avatar Interop or if that comes into another working group, we should have that conversation as part of the broader coordination. How do we work together effectively, even as we're doing this sort of small group work as well? I want to hear from all of you in terms of I wanted to suggest a potential Miro board and collaborative strategic development process that I've used before called the Platform Design Toolkit. It's an open source set of canvases that was developed in Europe, and I workshopped with it at Institute for the Future, I want to say maybe 2.5, 3 years ago now. I can share that with you as a Miro board. And I would want to walk you through it and kind of take us through that conversation to see if this is what we think is going to work for us. I want to hear if that's what you want to do right now. Does that sound like the right use of this time in this moment?
Can you repeat what the high level is again?
Okay, so in order to meet our strategic planning goals, we need to do both some ecosystem mapping and organizational development work. And then we need to be able to apply that to the actions of our community, right? So it's sort of a two-step process that we need to go through. The first step is really defining our ecosystem and the entities and the roles and how they dance together, basically, what the sort of roles are is one big part of that process.
Something that comes to mind right away, I mean, and you have a lot of experience with this with Rock City VR, is kind of like a longer term, like something later in the year that, a lot of people during the summer before like Burning Man and the Bay Area or wherever, like are in workshops building and preparing, right? So like, what if we had something way later in the year where it's kind of like visualizing the ecosystem in the form of like a big event type of thing?
I think that's going to happen, and it's likely going to happen in June already. There are colleagues who are organizing that we will likely participate with, and that's awesome. And we still need to do the internal work. That's not just the sort of external ecosystem work too. So figuring out our internal community strategies, how we want to do that meta coordination, I think is something we want to do internally in the next 60 days. Like we're as Jesse mentioned, we're 30 days into a 90-day window, and the organizational development conversation needs to happen this month, realistically, for us to be able to then coordinate for other things. So
Can I screen share something that we've been using in another Discord?
I'd love to see it, and then I'll go ahead and screen share where I've been and what types of things we might engage with. Go for it.
Okay. Let me share my window here. Okay. Let me know if y'all can see it.
Nice. Yeah, I see.
Okay, so this is kind of a high level of the Metafactory ecosystem, and it's kind of broken down into working groups or sub-DAOs. And so you sign into here through Discord. They have a Discord bot, which you can verify, and it automatically kind of gets your PFP as well from here. So like, let me see where I am. Over here, I don't know why it's not showing, but you can then add notes, responsibilities, and whatnot. We kind of use this as like a front end to like high-level overview of what's going on in, this kind of flat organization.
This is great for the coordination side. I like what you're doing here. Great.
Yeah, this is where we link our HackMDs and any other attachments, and then we have a place for goals, and you can switch it between tables, Kanbans, and nodes. It's really cool how you can visualize the org in different ways, and then you can have a public view and a private view of such. So, yeah.
So this is Sobel? Is this?
Yeah, Sobel.io.
Okay, and I would love to assess this and see, once we do even like a first round of organizational development and just kind of build the canvas, this might be the right way to deal with the meta coordination problem long term, because we currently have a hard time seeing each other. So the avatar group isn't always, fully engaged in going to all the meetings of the GLTF group, and there are ways in which we do need to coordinate better.
Yeah, and the other thing I've been working on is a calendar that kind of weaves events between different Discords.
Great.
I don't know if I can bring that up right now, but so just a couple of things. But I really think the GitHubs, I've been going through, adding events to the calendar and going through the OMI, just the way that community documentation is done in OMI is really good. If you compare it to something else that's been corporate sponsored, like Blue Sky, for instance, I feel like we are underselling how good we are at some of this stuff, because it's a lot of eating our own dog food, and I don't know, it's so far so good. It is a little bit hard to kind of get caught up onboarding wise, but I got to give props that this community is doing pretty well compared to others.
I agree, and I want to thank you for saying that. Are there others who would like to give some thoughts to what Jen is showing us here and how this might work with us?
I think this organization map is really interesting. The ability to visualize who's doing what is really good. So an org map in however we want to do it is really important. The visibility of this tool I think is also important. So if we have an org map, I think we can just make it front and center however we want to do it. If we use a different tool to this, that's fine. I know we could just use FigJam and embed the Figma document somewhere. We could now GitHub allows you to do mermaid documents. Mermaid is flowcharts and all sorts of things like that, so you can embed that. It doesn't really matter what tool, but I think yes, we definitely need some org chart saying hey, here are the things that are happening. Here are the people involved. It would be nice to have more of a robust subgroup membership sort of system, because then we know who to ping for different meetings. Right now we're using Discord roles, and I think that works great. So yeah,
this ties in with Discord roles really too.
That's great to see. I like that.
That's awesome.
It's all there, so I recommend it. And one day, these bubbles, this is one server, right? Metafactory. There'll be other bubbles over here, and it'll just be higher and higher abstraction levels I foresee in the future.
Fascinating. I like this a lot. This is very interesting.
Seems to solve a lot of multiple overlapping hits from the past and from the present.
I'm going to put up here the canvas I mentioned to you earlier, which is a, let me make sure I can go to this thing here. Sorry, I'm, again, managing too many windows, and I'm noticing it's getting to me. This is a sort of pre-design process that might help us make sure that we've got those relationships and roles clear. The Platform Design Toolkit is something that is used by both community organizations and companies to do this work. It is really designed to do some of that meta coordination design work. So it's open source, and this process as a sort of series of canvases was designed starting in 2017. What I've started to do is just start to outline the different players in our ecosystem. We obviously need to begin making those different primary roles and secondary roles more clear. And so this is one way to begin doing that and looking at the different relationships and sort of who's holding what, right? And this is for each working group as well. Going to zoom in here. The kinds of interactions and roles do sort of need to be aligned to everyone's goals and incentives so that we're designing for everyone to be mutually receiving benefit and value out of the work. So this is really designed for that. And then again, this is a strategic process where each of these canvases, like each section here, were designed to take about 45 minutes with. So this is really looking at all of our communities and our roles and making sure that we're matching the community and the roles to the needs. So that's just mapping the interactions and the relationships, and then making sure that those relationships are super clear on something like what Jen just showed us on the ecosystem mapping tool. I like the Sobol tool, by the way, and I think this is probably a pre-game to doing that kind of work. In some cases, we haven't been super clear about the interactions and what those sort of value propositions are. This transactions board core relationship is one of those things that we need to sort out in terms of what partnerships and sponsorships might look like so that we can do events. And this is one of the things that the interoperator group basically wants to do. In order for this to be effective, it needs to happen with the community input. So this is sort of where the interoperator group needs to meet the rest of this community and figure out what we want to value and really focus on together. And then you're designing for that platform experience. And this is really going back to then making sure all of our tools are meeting all of those community needs. And so we're taking every interaction and saying, okay, can you find that on the Git? Here's how I participate. I know how to participate, making sure that all of those gaps work. I don't know that we have to do all of this, but I do think we need to do some of this. And I know that when it comes to a minimum viable platform, some of you are familiar that some of our colleagues are working on sort of a minimum viable metaverse concept. I've seen 2 talks this week on this concept. Meta coordination and how we fit into that story is what needs to happen in terms of like, how are we telling the story of interoperability with all of these players? So I don't think we need to do some of this work right now, but I do think we need to do these larger canvases in terms of making sure that we have the roles we need, making sure that each person in their roles knows what they're doing and sort of how to hand off to each other, and then making sure that our incentives and our engagement strategy is in line with the kind of community we want to be. So that's where this particular tool comes in. I don't know that it's what we need to do as a whole. I just wanted to make sure that we have that option as a way to organize towards something like what Jen showed us on the Sobol. I do think the Sobol type solution would be a really great way to organize and make that visible long term. I just don't know if we'd want to start there, if that makes sense.
In that platform design toolkit, is there more of the high level, so not org chart as in people, but org chart as in the descriptions and the purposes of the different groups? I guess that's kind of the interaction side of it.
Yeah.
That's like one of the things that we need probably the most is like, in order to write the content for our GitHub, for our website, we need to know we need to go over the purposes of these different subgroups again and figure out how they all fit together into a larger story.
And we probably need to expand the different types of roles as a whole. And that could include a wide variety of roles of all types. But how we sort of do the leadership dance together as a whole community is something that we want to put forward as a pivotal part of this conversation, right?
Okay. So is this something that we could spend the next maybe like 10 minutes doing? Is like, what are the different parts from that toolkit? You can either stream that again, or we can kind of spitball the different pieces. But what are the different pieces that we'd like to use in our own workshop for, let's say, next week during this meeting slot time? I kind of want to get to the like actionable part of this as soon as possible, so that we can kick off this process and yeah, like we've been talking about doing this for a little bit, and I think we need to start doing some of it. But we need to have a plan of like, what are the different things that we want in this workshop, or do you need more time to explore that?
I don't need more time. I just need to be able to get my screen share to work without things getting funky in Discord.
Okay.
That's really the key. So I think from the platform design toolkit, let me see if I can get the screen share working one more time. All right.
So I think we had a general agreement on an org chart. That's going to be really key.
Right. Yeah, I think we need to do the interaction and relational work here, right? So I started off on this just trying to list the different type of people who are participating in our community right now, and just doing this as a sort of exercise. I think this is ready to be added to. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to this board in our meeting here so that we can all see it. Meeting chat, there you go. So if you would like to add to this board, you now have that link. It's in the meeting chat.
Yeah, the only problem with Mira is that I have to sign in.
I hear you, and I don't know that, like I said, that's where I wanted to bring this for comment and hear if this is the best way to roll this, or if we want to take the ideas here in terms of ecosystem mapping and take them into a different tool altogether, like Sobel, and just go directly there. I think what we need to do is map out the relationships and the roles, and then the incentives are going to come after that. So we need to get to this portrait, at least in terms of, okay, a working group includes these number of participants, roughly. These are the roles that they're in, and these are the people that then go out and do different things for that community. And we need to just understand the participation points differently. How we facilitate, that's up to you.
I'm sorry. Would you please post that in the Discord chat, because I don't have time to create an account on that other interface right now.
I'm sorry, post what?
The org chart. Can you do a screenshot and post that to the text chat so I don't have to create an account to log in to see that?
I think he's about Miro, right? Miro requires login, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
Well, she's sorry.
I'm sorry, I've copied a second link that will hopefully give you access to view it without logging in. Sorry about that. Let's see if that helps. And I can also give you a link to the Platform Design Toolkit as a general workshop, which is here.
Yeah, when we actually run this, I think we should look for tools that don't need sign in. But for now, like, you can use the stream to check things out. The one thing that I wanted to get off of this is there are a lot of sections to this. They're time boxed for 45 minutes for each of these sections, and we're not going to have time to go through all this. We'll lose interest pretty quick.
Right.
So pulling out the biggest, the most useful sections of this so that we can structure our workshop around this, I think is the best use of the next 10 minutes. It's like we need some process to go into this workshop, hopefully starting next week. So the goals of this should be defined by the group. So yeah, just looking for feedback as to how we want to do this workshop for the next week.
One thing I was wondering that when it comes to workshops, because I'm kind of doing this as well in another community, just kind of like ops side of organization, visualization, and processes, is if we could just kind of like, this mirror board has a lot of really great info, and I'm working on like a writer's room where we're doing virtual productions and whatnot. Now I'm just literally like spatializing things in Neos and in like hubs, because we have like media sharing in there, and kind of like creating a 3D kind of spatialization, kind of like Sobel, but in 3D. And I don't know, just a suggestion to make it more fun and like a persistent mind space that gives you a high level look at what people are doing.
I think you're right that doing an immersive workshop might be a really great way for us to eat the dog food on this one.
So
where we can do that effectively without losing our minds and staying clear and focused is the key.
Yeah, that's true. I was just kind of thinking if you could export some of these charts individually, except there are a lot of useful notes outside of them. So.
There's all the canvases are easy to import, and if we have a place with sticky notes, we can absolutely do this workshop in a 3D space, and I think that's a great suggestion. Are there others who would be into that idea? Keep in mind that like Robert said, there's probably at least 2 or 3 canvases we need to do here. So giving ourselves 2 hours for that process. That could happen during this time window, but we would need to expand our current meeting window to be a 2-hour window. And that could happen as soon as a week from now or 2 weeks from now. But we do want to try and front load it soon, as soon as possible.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we want to run this workshop, or what do we want the deliverables, I guess, to be? I think
outcomes, yeah. Let's be outcomes focused here. So we need our key roles, entities, and relationships outlined. That's the organizational development 101. Then we need to make some decisions about, do we need to expand our leadership container? And there's some conversation about how to meet those goals that would need to be included as well. How we need to probably open up a 45-minute time where we have a conversation about that piece of the puzzle. And I think we can cue that up at this stage, but now we know at least what are we framing in the conversation: roles, entities, relationships, and the organizational development structure as the outcome that could be ported to something like Sobel or some other device.
And defining what these roles are, I guess, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that we have a clear organizational chart that is then linked on all of our resources, and that everyone knows how to participate in our community.
Okay. So this is is this the main deliverable? Are you looking at my stream now? I've got key roles, entities, and relationships, and we'll do this.
This opens up the conversation about what roles we want in our community, and I would love for everyone to be just thinking about that at this stage, whether that's making our volunteer roles more specific and defined, or giving some cred to different types of roles and maybe being more public about that so that we can show how a wide variety of people participate here and that they come from a wide variety of backgrounds. How to express that effectively. Right now, we're not using our website to really tell the story of our community. We're using it to drive people to the Git and the Discord into our community events. So there's obviously a lot of expansion in the second half, which is interaction design, engagement strategy. So our goal for section 1 of this workshop needs to be org chart and defining roles. Second round, which we could do in a second section, I would not try and do these both in one day, would be interaction design and engagement strategy.
Is this also drawing on the previous work that's been done related to this, the milestone? It's just like,
yeah, I mean that's based on what we noted was needed in order to address that, but we also need to open up a time for proposals. So if anyone wants to make proposals based on this discovery process, we should leave an open door, especially this month, to new ways of working.
Related to proposals for everybody who's here, and please spread the word. We have a milestone on the backlog that's tracking the new structure of OMI. There are tickets that have gone in depth about what tasks are currently getting done, but we've ideated as potential future roles. We've also had, we have a discussion. One of our issues is discussing, or points to a discussion that's discussing proposals about certain changes that we can make with OMI. So I'll make sure that we link that in the discussions to easy to find. And then I'm going to create an issue for this workshop that's related to it too. So it's all in one place that we're all from the same.
So I'd like to suggest that we next week dive into section 1 of the workshop, and then we leave a week for conversation, proposals, and general work. And then we do the follow-up workshop 2 weeks after the first workshop. The second one would be, again, more organizational development, applying the first workshop to our community and our work. So that's when, if you have a proposal or something that you think we should be doing differently or better, or want to see us move forward on something, the proposals, we would want to bring those to the table 2 weeks from today.
What other? So sorry, I'm still trying to figure out this follow-up workshop. So organizational development, what does that entail?
Specifically applying. Now that we know the roles we need, we need to apply both. So in the Miro board, for example, there was a board around interactions and making sure that the interactions and the things that we were inviting people to matches the needs and the roles in our community. So you were taking the roles and we're taking our sort of broad community outlook and then making sure that the things we're doing match the things that our community needs. So that's interaction design in part, but it's also engagement strategy, making sure that we are delivering on our charter and what we said we came here to do.
This is awesome. So I'm going to share my screen really quick as well. I'm going to write those 2 tickets on the spot so everyone can see how that's done. One screenshot, but I'll get with you, Evo, async, and we can add screenshots and steps, and I'll make sure that we fill it in. But what I've done is created workshop part. Actually, let's go to the milestone. So in order to get here, what you do is you go to OMI group, click on OMI group. We're at /OMI group. This is our main repo with our main README, right? This is where we track meta tasks. If you go to projects, for example, you can see we have the OMI general tasks here. If I go back to OMI group and I click on issues, get a little bit bigger so everyone can see. And on issues, I'm going to click on milestones. I also linked to this milestone in today's notes, so if I'm moving too fast, you can get to it that way.
in future structure of OMI, you can see we have 5 closed tickets. And see this stuff, message me after, and I'll make sure we get you access. You're able to see kind of what we've done so far, what we've discussed so far, what's related to it. And now I've created workshop part 1 and part 2. And so just don't have to go into too much detail, right? But like, what did you, just so I can make sure I'm capturing this right, what did you think for part 1?
I'm sorry.
Like pop quizzed you, I didn't give you any heads up.
I know, and I'm sitting here reading all the great comments and noticing everything in this community. I'm so sorry.
All right. Part 1 of the workshop, what was our objective?
Org chart and roles, number 1. Org chart and roles, and that's going to also help us see if we need to expand our leadership, what do those roles need to entail? Because obviously some groups are doing a great job and some groups need to maybe rethink how those roles are playing out. I would love for working groups. We should transition to working groups at this point and maybe think about how this applies to the individual working groups as well, because the roles that we see as a whole community are also, in some cases, playing very well in the working groups, and in some cases, not as well.
It's okay. It's a good call out too. So, all right, cool. So I captured that here. Let me go ahead and I'll hit update comment. Boom. So now let's go back to the milestone. We have part 2. You said after about a week.
I've got all the. What? I just posted the workshop planning comment that I was working on there. It should be in the.
Here. Oh, that's so beautiful. All right, sweet. I have everything I need. I'll create the tickets. If anybody has any questions about creating tickets, you can message me. But I am all done sharing my screen work.
Cool. Yep. So we got a plan. We've got next week, first workshop. Week after, we're gonna break for proposals and discussion, and then the week after that, we'll follow up with a workshop.
I see 21 people here. If we were going to try and meet in a 3D space, which spaces have the best sticky notes? Just curious.
I personally don't think it's not going to work.
You don't think it would work? It'd be too much.
Yeah.
I think it might be useful for us to keep a 3D room active during the workshopping process. Even if we're building asynchronously on the synchronous work.
Possibly. It's all about engagement. It's keeping people engaged and making sure that they can effectively add to this board, because they are very, like, these workshops are pretty rapid fire because we don't have a ton of time.
Right.
Like, are we going to extend our meeting time for the next 2 workshops? I think we kind of have to, right?
I think we'd need to for at least the first one, and likely for both. Yeah. So that's the first proposal to have a conversation about right now is, do you all feel comfortable with doing a slightly longer, up to 2-hour workshop this time next week? Does that work for?
Maybe we can bookend it by doing 30 minutes on either side, so that if people have conflicting meetings, at least they can make 30 minutes of that time.
We can break it down to 1:30. Yeah, that would work, and we could
No,
start.
I'm saying we can start 30 minutes earlier and end 30 minutes later.
Yeah, that also works. To do 8:30 to 10:30 PST next week. Any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, Mel saying sounds good.
Cool.
Anyone else have objections to that?
And if this isn't your jam and you don't want to participate, but you want to keep going on your other stuff, totally fine. Understand. It's okay. Not everybody needs to do all the things. I want to make sure we jump over to working groups and give some time for those. So let's transition and make sure we get everybody in today.
So first up, we got the website. There. this bi-weekly cadence. I don't know.
We have one update. I'm unmuted, sorry. I'm so annoying. I'm going to mute after this. We had yesterday during Retro a really call out that was a really quick fix was that website calendar. Oh, no, never mind. It's related to them. We updated the calendar information so that you can now subscribe if you're using iCal or Outlook. The previous calendar integration would only integrate with email and just the calendar, but that was not the website.
The calendar on the GitHub now has all that.
Yeah. On our main
this is
README.
related. We're kind of like maintaining both of those.
I said it yesterday. I kept saying, "Oh, that's got to go on the website backlog," and then it gets like corrected. I'm like, you're right. So, but yeah, now you can subscribe, and it just our ability for folks who are newcomers who want to subscribe to the event calendar.
We have the OMI chain group. We have the people from that group. So, scripting group, we have shortened our meetings to 30 minutes. We're kind of in this like pattern as we have each project kind of like working on underlying things. So Adam is working on science base and has been, I think, pretty busy with work there. I'm working on third room at Element. We've got Chris Data working on a base implementation, and you might be seeing a Godot-based version too.
Yeah, we're still working on Godot.
Sweet. And yeah, so we've got a number of different things. I think there's more than that too. Mike is working on a Unity-based version. I think there might be a second Unity-based version. But anyways, we're all kind of collectively working on our projects, keeping the meetings fairly short. Just kind of using that time to talk about various things. This week we were talking about OSC protocols and figuring out like how we might integrate more scripting around avatars and controlling animations and emotes and things like that. Piping in data from MIDI controllers and things like that into the scripting environment and being able to drive avatars off of it, which is very interesting and starts to touch a lot of things that we haven't really talked about yet. So that was really cool. For the GLTF group, we moved the audio emitter into stage 2, which is we finally have all the repositories up to date and have multiple implementations of the audio emitter out there. So for that, we have the collider. We've been talking about splitting out the OMI physics body from the OMI collider extension. So we'll work on OMI collider first. We're kind of working through the different things that we'll need for OMI collider. One thing that might interest people is colliders on their own. We're kind of trying to avoid specifying too much default behavior before we start diving into additional physics things. So if you used Unity before, like if you had like a collider component or a rigid body component, like there are ways of using it for triggers, and there's ways for using it for just collision volumes, and there's ways for using it for like dynamic or kinematic physics bodies, so they can like fall or move around conversation around avatar animation retargeting. There's a lot of work going on in this ecosystem right now. Just today, I saw more progress within 3GS world. There's a big PR out for Godot about animation retargeting, and we're kind of trying to figure out where we fit in this ecosystem and trying to figure out how we might design a standard around the VRM spec and figuring out how to retarget animations packaged in GLTF onto another GLTF VRM. And maybe the first step of this is documenting the process of creating those animations and applying them to another avatar. So that's kind of where we're at on that. In this section, we got response back from the original author of the Mozilla text extension, Diego, who's working at Embark now. And otherwise, we'll go ahead and use the Mozilla text extension. Related, I spoke on a panel with Neil Trevitt. Thank you, Evo, for inviting me to that. Neil Trevitt is the president of the Kronos organization, and leading the whole GLTF working group efforts and all that. And he had a lot of nice things to say about our work at OMI. So yeah, keep it up, everyone. I think that's it for working group updates. Yeah, it was fairly short.
But there's a lot behind the scenes. Y'all have been doing fantastic work. And I just want to double down on what Neil had said, that, this community is doing tremendous heavy lifting at a time where that's pretty rare to see, like in the open source space. Obviously, there's hundreds of products being spun up, but y'all are showing up for doing some deep interop work that is meaningful to a wide variety of people. So not just Neil and Kronos, but industry players as a whole have noticed. And I just wanted to give you some shout outs and feedback that this community is making bigger ripples than we realize. Sometimes this meeting can feel very like in the weeds, but the big picture is that there is room for an open metaverse, in part because of the work that all of you are doing.
Thanks again. It does look like we have one housekeeping task, which is we did propose minimum requirements for a working group to operate, but I don't think that we've closed this one out.
Not closed yet, and probably not enough time, but if you have thoughts about what you'd like to see as a minimum over the next week, feel free to add any comments in there. And at some point soon, I'd like to see us take it to a vote.
Okay.
And I'd like to see it be like the minimum, right? But are seeing like a micro pattern emerge of folks who are new, who don't really know where to go, how to get involved. And there's probably some basic things that we can do with our working groups, like having a README or a working agreement or something to that effect that satisfy that. But I want it to be a group decision and not something that I'm preaching from the mountaintops.
Totally agree.
Yeah. One thing that you could do though is, if you want to is this updated most recent proposal in the issue?
It is, yeah, and it's I try to keep it up to date with the feedback that I get.
Okay. The other thing,
want to just squeak it into vote today. I thought that might be Nikki.
Another thing for these sorts of changes that would be really, really, really helpful for people making proposals is if we can do these as pull requests, where the actual language that's being added to the various pages is in the pull request. It makes it really easy for us to, tweak language or, just hit the button right away. It makes it very actionable.
to do today. Thank you. Run, but I always seeing all of you. I think we had some new folks. Did new people get to introduce themselves today?
No, let's make sure we get that in right now.
I think I see some of my new friends here. So if you're new, I'd love we'd love to hear a quick intro, who you are, what you do.
Hello. Hi guys, my name is Shirley. Jesse, I guess that's the full to me. I just wanted to do a quick intro. So I reached out to Jesse because I saw him during, it was an event that happened last year, Tech Circus, and it was really about the metaverse. So I just kind of explained, or at least introduced myself and the work that I've done in the past in VR and what I'd like to do going forward. So a quick summary. I'd say I'm a relatively early adopter, so I got into the space between 2007, 2008, built a business on Second Life, eventually had to leave because of I would say, like, I don't want to get too deep because I don't really know you guys personally, so I don't want to sort of trauma dump, but basically I had to balance life, and I've kind of been in and out of the space, but now with the announcement by Meta, it kind of I think it's just a really pivotal time for anyone who's in this space, and me coming sort of, or at least positioning myself in this space, I definitely want to be someone who is able to present Web3 opportunities to young people in terms of how they can get involved, in terms of onboarding, in terms of getting jobs as engineers, as people who can create communities, etc., and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I'm looking to fit in right now. So thank you very much. Thank you so much. I hope to meet you all very soon.
Yeah, maybe we met in Second Life many years ago. I made a living there for a number of years, as well as a few others
sure
here.
There's stories you can share.
Yeah. Welcome. Are there anyone else who's their first time here or haven't introduced themselves?
Hi, I'm Prof. Sorry to just be catching the end of this meeting. I gamed a lot as a kid and sort of lost that over the years, and a couple years ago dove into Web3, started kind of exploring some of the virtual worlds there, and then actually VR is sort of what reinvigorated my interest for the metaverse, and the combination of that with Web3 got me very excited, and so I really dove in headfirst, and I've been working in the space for a couple of years. So I'm mainly here to see how I can get involved and try to keep up a little more. I've been lurking for a little bit, so just wanted to pop in and say hi, and hope to get to know you all better.
Nice to see you. We do have a number of other professors and academic researchers here, and part of that organizational development process is maybe figuring out if our roles overlap in such ways that we can begin to expand our meta coordination efforts, and who knows, down the road we can do all sorts of things together. Great to meet you.
This is Professor Oak, by the way, not this was inspired by Professor Oak. I'm not a professor.
Got it. We have another prof who is a prof who hangs out around here sometimes, so I never want to assume one way or the other.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone, and I think that wraps it for today. We will see you next week in our workshop. Remember, it is 30 minutes